Higuruma has blown up online, and it goes to show the pure dominance Jujutsu Kaisen has over online culture. For every new release, there seems to be a plethora of memes and references popping up regarding the anime. We already have the Naoya beating up Chozo clip, fan art of Punchy the monkey as Maki, and now Higuruma with this clip. Not to mention stuff from previous seasons and the manga. While it's easy to say this is a result of the anime itself being so popular, I think it's easier to flip it and say that its presence on social media and media in general has been why it's become such a powerhouse. With it infiltrating general culture, like how Gojo is known by people who don't even watch any anime. He's been referenced in the Megan Thee Stallion song, and his domain expansion hand sign has been thrown up by celebrities, which causes interest in the show to grow. I think this all goes to show how anime in general has been widely accepted in our culture in the US, once being made fun of, and now it's a part of our everyday lives. Domain expansion. Informative, real.
Why is Japan generating electricity with footsteps, and why won't people stop talking about it? This most likely is kind of an algorithm hack. If a bunch of reels that use that caption are getting millions of views, then the algorithm will notice and start promoting things that use similar captions. Kind of just like a chain effect. We saw this with this one Chinese block of text that was also everywhere, and just auto-generated summaries about random stuff like cars and cities. It's also why you see that Tame Impala song used as a sound all the time, even if the reel didn't actually use it. It just gets picked up by the algorithm more and requires no extra effort to do. With this caption though, it's gotten even more widespread. Comments often talk about it, and now there's reels just about it in general. The issue here though is that it kind of takes a lot out of making captions. Like, you can just copy and paste the same thing and do even better than someone who actually puts in the effort. But also, to be fair, a lot of these are just repost anyways, so does it really matter? Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this.
So what is going on with Arby's, and what is the chitlin sandwich? For starters, the chitlin sandwich is not a real thing, and if you don't know what that is, it is literally pig intestines. The joke here is that Arby's food is nasty to some people. Hey, if you didn't grow up in the struggle, you don't know. A beef and cheddar hits sometimes, guys, come on. But this has created a huge trend of people ironically going to Arby's, ordering a pound of meat on their sandwich and eating the entire thing and being really obnoxious during it. But there are some funny things I've seen, like people going up to people in drive-thrus and asking why they're getting Arby's, or this one account that has people literally ordering gourmet Arby's. Will people ever think Arby's is good? No, it'll always be clowned on. And if you're a fan, hide.
So why are people LARPing Kagurabachi? To understand that, we have to start from the start. So as a huge fan of this manga, I will admit that the first chapter is very edgy and corny, and the character writing is kind of bad. A lot of people made fun of this and were pretty set that this manga was probably gonna fail, so they joked about it similarly to Morbius. It's Kagurabaki time. And in the following weeks, the numbers were not looking good. This series was at the back of Shonen Jump every week, but for those who kept up with it, they were rewarded with a manga that was getting better and better by each chapter. And a couple months in, people were like, whoa, this is kind of good. And it just kept getting better and better, and now people coming back to it, and they were starting to hype it up. They had an agenda to fill. So then the anime got announced, so now people are defending their OG status. Some are taking it a little too seriously. It's mostly a joke, but it's good to see that this author who was seemingly going to be cut continued to work hard and made his manga very good, to the point where it's now receiving what looks like a really good anime adaptation.
Tell us just about yourself.
My name is Tuna Wen. I've lived in the community in Champaign-Urbana for the last 12 years. I'm originally from Orange County in California. Prior to that, I actually immigrated from Vietnam when I was about a year and a half old.
How and when did your family first immigrate here?
My family immigrated from Vietnam in 1978, and we were actually boat people. So boat people escaped from Vietnam on boat, and oftentimes the boat people were not necessarily fishermen, or they were the wealthier of the Vietnamese people who could buy a boat and, escape. But that presented an issue because a lot of the people escaping by boat didn't know how to sail, didn't know how to operate a boat, and that was the same with my family. What happened was that the boat kind of gave out and died, and they were just sort of floating at sea for a while. The sad thing is that often people would starve at sea, or they would die at sea, or sometimes they would be killed at sea, you know, by pirates. Pirates came by and they took all our gold. My family was really sad because they took our gold, but they left us just to die. And they really begged the pirates to tow us to land. And the pirates really didn't want anything to do with us. So they didn't really want to get in trouble.
Did they have any choice in coming to the U.S., or did they consider going to another country?
My parents felt like they didn't have any choice but to escape Vietnam, because Vietnam under the communist regime was really different from the Vietnam that they grew up with and had known. My dad was a very important government official, and work in what was equivalent to the state treasury. He had, my mom said, a bounty on his head. And so for a lot of my sort of childhood, while I was living in Vietnam, he was on the run, or like had escaped, and because there was a bounty on his head, he was in hiding. They weren't able to stay and be safe. So I didn't feel completely at home with Vietnamese people, in the sense that, you know, I wasn't quite Vietnamese enough for a lot of the immigrants. So my parents are obviously Vietnamese, and you know, they created a very loving and warm environment, and we had a lot of family around, but they really wanted us to preserve a lot of our culture, and that was hard for young immigrants who, you know, had to also assimilate in the U.S.
What were some challenges you and your family had to face growing up?
There was a lot of overt racism in Orange County, and even when it wasn't overt, you know, there was a lot of microaggressions towards Vietnamese people, or just people who are seemingly different, especially in the community that was predominantly white. It was really hard as a child, just feeling different.
Did your parents talk about their experience in Vietnam?
Yeah, my parents did talk about their experiences in Vietnam, although I think they leave a lot of the very traumatizing parts out, like the things that they feel are unspeakable. I think the things that we learn about is scrubbed in a lot of ways. So they do talk about Vietnam, and they do talk about the good times, but they always say, like, Vietnam is not the way it is, not the country it used to be, and so we cannot be there. And a lot of it is political, but a lot of it is that it has changed so much due to the war that they just cannot be there anymore. I think that they experienced and witnessed a lot of death. I know my dad during the war, because of the history with France, a lot of the people spoke French, and I do know when his family was interrogated by the communists, and they came to his household, because his brother spoke French, they shot his kneecaps. They just thought he was a traitor, and then he asked to be executed because it was so painful, so he was shot in front of the family.
Did they ever consider visiting?
Oh yes, they do. My dad has passed, and my mom is still alive, and you know, during when my dad was still around, I think he went to visit Vietnam 2 or 3 times, once with the whole family, once with all his 5 daughters, and I actually went to see where I was born, like the hospital where I was born, and I was able to visit you know, where my mom and dad grew up. They enjoyed visiting and enjoyed connecting with their families and friends who have stayed behind, but at the same time, they always, I think, recurrent theme is that the country is not the way it used to be.
What was it like seeing the Vietnam War and its aftermath discussed and taught in school?
It felt very strange as a young person when the Vietnam War was discussed in class, only because my internal dialogue would switch between like being Vietnamese and being American, just because I was both, and it felt like maybe people didn't understand what side I was on. I felt a little bit shameful in the sense that they were going to war against the Vietnamese, but if young people understood it, specifically it was the Viet Cong, or like the Communist Party. I think it's really easy to be lumped in with that when you're teaching it in school and your friends don't really understand like who we were truly fighting, or it was more of the politics or ideology versus the people.
Were people more critical of Vietnamese people or the U.S. for how they handled the war?
People were more critical of the U.S. than the people of Vietnam. A lot of people agreed that the U.S. was in that war for much too long, and I think looking back, a lot of people did agree that no, maybe it wasn't the U.S.'s war. That's probably one of the reasons why they lost it. They weren't able to defeat the Viet Cong because there was a lot more conviction. The people who were fighting for their country felt a lot of conviction for what they were fighting for.
Are there any depictions about like the war and the immigration that you don't like?
There's a lot of imagery that's shown about the war that's very gruesome. It just goes to show how like war is so incredibly cruel and damaging and can be traumatizing to a whole, generation. So there's a lot of depiction about the war where I just felt as though being Vietnamese that, it was evident to me that a lot of people who were fighting that were Americans, like, didn't maybe care about the country, like the different tools and tactics that they use. The enemy, they couldn't tell who their enemy was, right? Because at the end of the day, it was Vietnamese people fighting Vietnamese people. And so some of the tactics that they use, such as like Agent Orange, to burn down forests, or like massacring a whole village because they were distrustful, or executions.
And what would you say is a common misconception about Vietnamese culture?
To really think of Vietnamese people or Asian people are a monolith and like we're all the same, but I think that even within the Vietnamese community there's people are really diverse in thought. I think that people can forget about that, and then to sort of lump us all together, that's really easy to do with any culture that can appear seemingly the same in terms of appearance.
Looking back, what does your family's journey mean to you now?
Looking back, my family's journey from Vietnam to the US has really been important to my identity and been important to our family history, and knowing that my parents brought me here for a better life and opportunity, is extremely meaningful. And it makes me not take a lot of things for granted. It makes me strive more for better things for my children even.
What do you hope people understand about your family's story?
All the people and all these experiences are the fabric of our country, and knowing that, there are so many people from different places that have had like so many different types of experiences, but still have that common thread with being American and really loving this place, and this place we have made home is really important, especially in this time.
Hey everyone, so I've lived in this town most of my life. Through that, I've witnessed campus change quite a bit over the years. Like, did you know that the McDonald's on Green Street used to be a GameStop? But the main point I wanted to make was how much the culture of Green Street has changed. and the expansion of Asian American spaces on campus. Slowly over the course of about the last 10 years, there have been more and more of an Asian influence on Green Street, which has definitely helped in diversifying the food and look of campus from a very Midwest looking place to a bright community that we all look forward to coming back to. So I'd like to show how some of those spaces have changed with this little project. Enjoy.